there was just a major deal struck between Glencore and Rosneft, the Russian state oil company, which was sanctions compliant because it had nothing to do, sanctions have nothing to do at the moment with buying and selling equity in Russian energy enterprises. I think Europe is not going to stand by and certainly is going to exert pressure on the United States not to do anything that's going to really hinder foreign direct investment. Now, what the U.S. could do, and what people like myself have been advocating that it should do in response is, look, Russia's a kleptocracy. The elite, the power vertical in the government, keeps its money abroad. Vladimir Putin, according to the first suite of sanctions the U.S. ever implemented for the invasion of Crimea, has got access to direct cash in a Swiss commodities trading firm. This is according to the U.S. Treasury. Why not disclose that information, right? Where are the bank accounts, the chalets and chateaus that are being kept for the president of Russia and his inner circle? That's a kind of information warfare the U.S. has at its disposal. Now, the one thing they could also do in response to the hacking is, look, if the directors of the FSB, which is the Domestic Security Service, and the GRU, which is the Military Intelligence Service, the two agencies accused of perpetrating these hacks independently of one another, if they're put on a sanctions list, then this is the U.S. basically declaring war against Russia's intelligence service.
I have to ask you this, because the response was heated from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I want to put up what they said. It said, if Washington really does take new hostile steps, they will be answered. Any action against Russian diplomatic missions in the U.S. will immediately bounce back on U.S. diplomats in Russia. Frankly, we are tired about the lies about Russian hackers. It's misinformation by the Obama administration aimed at providing an excuse for its own failure. The question is, I mean, this could get pretty bad.
Yeah, but I mean, look, the Russians have been very cheeky about this. Sergei Lavrov gave an interview to Christian Amanpour on this network a few months ago, saying, we never denied it, but they never proved it. Forcing the United States to come out with evidence that this has happened. What kind of evidence would that entail? It could be signals intercepts, this kind of stuff the NSA does, or, more likely, it could be human intelligence, meaning the CIA has got spies in Moscow who know things because they've got agents working in the Russian government who are feeding them information. We cannot compromise that kind of sourcing. So it's very difficult for the U.S. government to sort of say, here's all the evidence that we know the Russians did.
And you put it in the right perspective. It is the U.S. government. It's not just the Obama administration. It's the CIA, it's the FBI. And
every intelligence agency there's a consensus on this.
Should the president have acted sooner?
Yeah, I think he should have. When he gave that press conference a couple of weeks ago and said, oh, well, back in September, I met Mr. Putin in Beijing, and I told him, you got to cut it out with the hacking of my country. Look, this is a guy who has been credibly accused in British High Court of ordering the irradiation assassination of a Russian dissident in a London hotel, telling him to knock it off, please. It doesn't really cut it.
Evan, I hear you want to respond.
Well, I think Michael's right. I mean, I think the president made a big show of saying that he told Putin to cut it out, and frankly, he hasn't stopped the hacking. I mean, we know that even since the election, there have been additional attempts by the Russians to break into Democratic Party officials' private emails. So they're not done, and what we know is going to continue happening, even under a President Trump administration, is that the Russian spy services are not going to quit doing this kind of stuff. And so even though I think Michael is right that some of this stuff doesn't have a lot of teeth, it is intended to be proportional, because one of the things we don't want is for us to have a wider cyber war with the Russians. We have a lot more to lose in that kind of engagement with the Russians than the Russians do, frankly.
For the interest of time, I won't play the soundbite, but we know that Donald Trump has reacted. He's dismissing this Russian hacking, saying that everyone should move on. There is not one, that's not exactly what Republicans in Congress are
That's
saying.
Not what Republicans want, exactly.
What kind of
that's
message
the other
does
problem.
that send is a question, Evan?
Right, and well, the problem is that I think the president-elect wants to move on, but there are members of Congress, including Lindsey Graham and John McCain, that are not going to let this go. And so if he tries to remove sanctions, I think you're going to see some pushback from Republicans and from Democrats.